Hello, everyone, and welcome to our virtual super panel, Sports and Entertainment Strategies for Dealing with Life in the New Different. My name is Ruby Newell-Legner. I'm a fan experience strategist that works with venue leaders in sports, leisure, and entertainment who want to sell more tickets and increase customer loyalty and retention. I am so honored to be the moderator for this session today. We have so many great topics to cover. We're going to get right into it. I've asked each one of our panelists for two things that they were most proud of and one fun fact. So you'll enjoy hearing about what they have shared with me. So let's welcome on John Nemeth.
Hey, Ruby.
Hey there. Good to see you. John's going to be talking about facilities today. Then in a few minutes, we're going to ask Andy to join us and he'll cover the senior management. Then Jim Mercurio is going to join us to discuss operations, and Andrew is going to talk about fan engagement. So many big topics that we're going to just really go fast here. So hang on. Here we go. And let's welcome John's slide so you know a little bit more about him. John has such outstanding achievements. One is being listed in the Sports Business Journal 40 under 40. And that's the who's who of sports business. And to be included in that group is quite an honor. The class that he was inducted with included individuals who have transformed sports at all different levels. The American Institute of Architects College of Fellows is another honor that he has, being recognized for contributions and accomplishments within his chosen profession. Less than 3% of all architects become AIA fellows, so this acknowledgement really reaches beyond simple business accomplishments. And John's fun fact, love this one. He only became an architect because his mom made him do it. Welcome, John. We're so glad you've joined us.
You know, how many people can say that? I only did X or Y because my mom made me do it. So it's maybe not less a fun fact, but maybe a guilty admission that we all share at some level. So.
I love it. You know, and now that you're recording that, it's going to go out into the universe there. So everybody's going to know. Thanks for sharing that. When we talked earlier, you shared that the last 3 decades of venues have been really overbuilt and overprogrammed and have been overvalued. In our conversations, I really like that you mentioned that the venue transformation is beginning to align with the shift in the industry economics. So why is that important to us and our audience, and what can we do today to address this situation in the near future?
Yeah, and it's a topic that has been near and dear to my heart for a while, and it was actually a big part of the thesis that got me my fellowship. But I think as we look at where businesses go and through some of the teachings that I do with say the Ohio sports management program, there's always this fundamental exception that sports facilities don't make money. An arena, a stadium, a ballpark, it loses money. And at some point, I wanted to start to challenge that. And as we've gotten into different levels of pro or collegiate or minor league baseball, we've had clients challenge that ourselves and say, hey, look, I have to pay for this. As we've seen a shift away from public funding at the professional level, say institutional subsidies at the collegiate level, and then a corresponding shift for positive revenue generation, of which facilities are a huge part of that. I know, like ticket sales and sponsorship and TV, but in the aggregate of where quote unquote revenue generation occurs, facilities do play a really significant role. And so as you look at, as a venue owner, team president, whatever your role in sports business might be, I started to just ask the question, is it okay to continue the status quo of venues lose money? If you don't have the public essentially paying the debt, sure, venues make lots of money for the people who are able to take them down. So then once we started exploring as AECOM, really like what does a private finance facility model look like? What is a completely self-sufficient debt and equity pro forma for a football stadium, a ballpark, a major professional arena, a major stadium? What does that look like? We really started to identify some things that I might call sort of revenue vampires. square footage that everyone just assumes we need. We all expect that we need big, wide concourses. We need.
I was just going to say the wide concourses.
All this storage space, concession stands that are designed for the sport, but then are shuttered for the concerts that occur, and 90% of the time the building's operational. So there's all these assumptions that we make, certain types of events that occur in buildings. We want to have event days, but when you really start looking at the profile of what does an event day mean, it could be everything like us recording this presentation to an 18,000 person live event, to a playoff game, to a ice skating event, could be anything. But when you really start to say, okay, if we analyze the overall profile of these buildings and the things that we just assume have to be included, do they really make money? And then, this is the one that folks who know me know it's been a passion of mine for all 27 years of my career. 100% of my career has been in sports facilities, is this notion of how do we as architects become stewards of the revenue or the investment that the entity is making, whether that entity is the public body or the entity is the team or the university or whoever it might be. How are we stewards of that money? And a lot of times, architects are guilty of wanting to create buildings that are edifices to themselves as opposed to economic engines. We worry about aesthetics, we worry about image, we worry about quality of finishes, carpets, tiles, ceiling tiles, big flying roofs, incredibly beautiful exteriors. But when you start to really look at all those decisions in the aggregate and then say, how do each one of those either contribute or siphon off income that a building can generate, it makes you start to say, hey, maybe this question isn't so crazy. And maybe the folks in the audience who have MBAs or are, very seasoned industry professionals might not think it's so crazy for this architect to be saying, man, why can't my stadium make money? If I could do it over again, I could tear it down to the ground and start over. And every decision was based on not how do I compare to all the other buildings of my peer group, or how do I compare to, another team locker room or a venue's suites or whatever the thing may do that we all benchmark ourselves to. How many bathrooms do they have? How many points of sale? All these metrics that for the last 3 decades have become accepted. If we started to compare ourselves in revenue per square foot or added revenue into those benchmarks, I think we'd look at them very differently.
For so long, we've been dependent upon the broadcast to make the income, or the 8 or 10 or 12, or depending on your sport, games in one facility. It's always interesting when I go in and talk to the different teams, and I suggested birthday parties one time, and they're like, why would we want to do birthday parties? Well, you've got the space, and it's an honor to be in that space. So when you're thinking about building it and you're creating a space like that, that's a revenue generator when you're non-event days. So, it's always interesting watching them go, huh? Yeah. I hadn't thought of that. So, I can see where some of your thoughts might be, and your premises might be a little controversial, but let's talk about the state of the sports business and the venues. So what backs up what you just said?
Well, let's look at, here's 2 what I might call indicators of why I believe there's 3 indicators of why I think there may be some credence to exploring this and investigating this further. Again, we're all going to approach it through the lens of how we engage with facilities. If I'm an operator or an event promoter, or a concessionaire, or whatever the case may be. But I think it's sort of one, and this is where it started for me, is again, go back to the removal of institutional support from all levels of collegiate athletics that started about 15 years ago. And so, and there's still a lot of, athletic departments and sports around the country, schools around the country where the institution significantly subsidizes the operations of that athletic department for a variety of reasons that have nothing to do with facilities. But where those schools or those athletic departments are wanting to make a capital investment in a stadium, an arena, a ballpark, a soccer stadium, whatever it is, because they want to generate revenue, what we find is that we're basically only able to pay for the debt. And by the time the debt's fully paid off, the building is of sufficient age where it needs significant upgrade or repair, maybe even replacement. So in the end, it never really generated any revenue at all. Maybe there was a little bit of a short-term gap. So we started really challenging with some of our higher ed clients how can we really create a business plan at the beginning, which will give you immediate and long-term operational growth to your income as an institution or as an athletic department. And again, even thinking about how, as we then further transition that into the professional world, this analogy I've used quite a bit about how we used to design professional facilities using sort of the Ronco set it and forget it. You put it on the books for 30 years. The taxpayers pay for it. We don't upgrade it. We don't change it. The suites, the clubs, the seats, everything just continues to age. I think what we're seeing now is a scenario where, yeah, you still may build a significant structure, but then there's significant components of that structure that need to be refreshed every 3 to 5 years. But the pro forma and the capital plan don't accommodate for that. Everyone still assumes I'm writing a $500 or a $1 billion check, and I don't need to worry about anything, for the next 30 years. And the reality of that, based on consumer trends or technology, is that almost the second that venue opens, you need to be thinking about where those key fan experience or event experience areas will need to be refreshed, because by the time you're going to need to do that, you're going to have that plan in place. And for some elements, that's about a 3 to 5 year window. Again, nobody thinks about the day that they open the building as the day they need to start planning for its renovation. They think that that's 15 or 20 years down the road. So that's a third component, or a second component of it. And I think the last one, which may be harder to pin down, but I think there's clear evidence of this, is the transition between historical ownership structures to what I call, new money. I think there were a lot of folks that are responsible for the business that we live and breathe in, and those contributions should not be diminished or undervalued. But in the vast majority of the cases, if those entities were trying to become pro sports owners today, they simply wouldn't have the financial wherewithal to do it. But now you're also seeing folks come into the business who've made money as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as investment bankers, Wall Street traders, whatever it is. And their expectation that this investment is going to perpetually lose money is not aligned with the industry profile that's existed, again, for the last 3 decades. And so now you're seeing this new era of primarily professional sports owners are saying, wait a minute, I'm paying for this myself. There's no tax debt. There's no public subsidy. Every dollar I'm investing needs to generate some level of return, or at the least not for profit. We got to break even. And that's a very different assumption than, again, the trend line that we've been on in buildings that have opened as recently as 2 to 3 years ago. And so I think you're going to see these things, maybe not right now, but certainly compound in the venues that will be opening in the next 3 to 5 years. And then certainly ones that are on our drawing boards right now that are 5 to 10 years out. There's going to be a whole different level of scrutiny over what am I spending from my account, and then what is the real calculus for that investment in terms of operating income or loss.
Absolutely. The solution that you lay out is rather daunting when you think about it. Even to think about, you would want to design build, and then actually in that plan for the next step before it's finished. Because you've got to have that, what's the future going to be like. And if they plan ahead at the very beginning, it's much easier than to retro something. I've been involved with many renovations, and it's just so hard to, let's make this work, So think about, I'm very curious. It's much more than the operations and the management of the venues. So how can industry leaders create a plan to address this situation?
Well, I think the first thing that I would recommend is, number one, we as an industry have to have some level of commitment to look to the future versus continuing to look backwards. Benchmarking as a fundamental exercise is a backwards looking exercise. I think a lot of the operational rules of the road, again, venue safety and security may be a little bit sensitive. That would set that one aside. But the ways that we want to impart into a facility planning exercise, rule of thumb, venue operations, rule of thumb, spectator experience, efficiency metrics, etc., are backwards looking and may be driving some of the inefficiencies that we're seeing when it comes to just physical square footage or accommodation that we have. Now, again, there's building codes and things that underlie some of the components of what goes into a building. But even things as simple as mechanical systems, as we see a push towards not only increased sustainability, but carbon neutrality, the ways that we think about building systems and the level of control and building automation, that's a future looking endeavor that a lot of historical expertise may not necessarily directly apply to. And, again, one funny story from a project that I did with Andy, one of my first professional projects years ago, is everybody worries about how much does it cost today. And there's this disconnect always with, the impacts on operations. But we created a building central plant that was very efficient, cheap in the first cost. But then what the team and the operations staff determined after they had gotten into it a year or two was every time they wanted to have that birthday party, they needed to fire up the entire central plant for the entire complex. It's basically like instead of turning on one light to go to the bathroom at night, you turn on every light in the house just to go to the bathroom. And it was that kind of analogy where they started to look at, say, why is this doing this? The utility costs, the
Right.
daily operational charges for the venue are ridiculous just to go in and sweep the floors. But that was something that no one ever thought about, is how do you create sort of different modes for different uses? Maybe some days you just need 1/10 of the capacity and you only want to engage 1/10 of that building infrastructure versus, on a full house day, you need everything you got and then some. That level of planning everywhere from the operations to the engineering to the construction is just, a lot of times it's just not thought of, because again, we're so worried about the first cost that we don't understand really the true life cycle impact about how is this building going to be more efficient to operate. And again, how is that going to contribute to either a positive income generation or a loss?
And truly, when you think about all of the different elements that go into that, I was thinking about the customer journey as you were talking, and how that has to be planned before it's, the plans are done. Because if they don't understand that there may be an area of the building that you want to keep open, and there has to be an entrance that's accessible for that area, so they don't have to go all around the building to keep those lights off where they're not needed. I mean, it's as simple as that, and making it smooth for everybody. So, go ahead.
Yeah, one last point, and again, I think maybe back to something that could be highly controversial, and again, may have a narrow view that requires, a certain amount of broadening. But think about just a typical concession stand. You being in the customer experience business, we all know what a transaction time or an experience to get our food or soda or water wants to be. And we spend so much time and effort and resources and money around optimizing that one thing. But typically, and it's maybe more of an applicable case for an indoor venue than an outdoor venue, but it's so driven around the sport. And then you look at how many number of calendar days is that venue used for everything but sport, concerts, birthday parties, whatever. And then that concession stand isn't used because there isn't that level of interest, the event profile, the consumer profile for the kind of events that's there doesn't need that kind of food and beverage operation, or because of maybe it's a Disney on Ice show and they bring in their own, popcorn and candy machines because they're just trying to sell that. So you think about all the money and all the effort and all the investment that goes into something that might only be used 1/10 of the time, and then it's dark the rest of the time, versus saying, how do we come up with a more flexible way to do food and beverage that's used across the spectrum of 365 days a year versus just a very narrow profile? But when we think about success or failure in venues, we're all judged on that one very narrow profile. No one ever says, oh, the food and beverage at that concert was awful. But if you go to a basketball game and you have to wait in line more than 30 seconds, you're on Twitter and you're on Instagram telling anybody how horrible the customer service is. So a lot of good behaviors, but when you look at, again, revenue vampires, that pro forma, the whole way that we approach F&B starts to really want to ask some questions. Again, I'm not saying it's a complete start over, but it really feels like that's an opportunity to fundamentally optimize how we do things to potentially better reduce the CapEx that we're spending, which then in theory could help with the uplift on what we're making. We may not have to sell as many hot dogs or Cokes to, quote, make money if we're not spending as much on the infrastructure to support that venue for a fraction of the time it's in operation.
I think about too in the last few months, even the changes that have happened, in the concession stands and any kind of food and beverage is, it's all contactless and cashless. And it's really, that is another change that just happened. So, don't we wish we could have predicted that? It would have been a lot better in some of the designs that they're having to retro right now. But
the pandemic has been great to accelerate the pace of technology integration into venues. I think a lot of folks really wanted to do it. For one reason or another, there wasn't a good decision point. But I think that fundamental safety and security that contactless brings, in addition to all the other efficiencies that you referenced, has dramatically accelerated the adoption, both from us as consumers, but venues as destination points of some really phenomenal technology, which I think is also going to pay dividends in the future.
Wow, we'll wrap up this part of the session, and I'll just share that there have been so many of my clients that have really, they had that list of someday we'll do this, and they've been able to do that in the last 18 months. They had to shift, so they went ahead and added a lot of things to what their offerings are, because the technology was there, the time was there, and they needed to prepare for, ticketless events. I mean, it was pretty phenomenal when that jump happened quickly for everybody. So, gosh, thank you, John. You've been very insightful, and we really appreciate it. And now I'm going to ask Andy Dolich to join us on the screen, and we will see what he's up to and get some wisdom from him. And we'll invite you back in a few minutes and have you do a recap for us. Okay, John? Thank you so much. And as Andy joins the screen, I get to tell a fun little story about Andy. Andy Dolich attended my 7-star service session at the National Sports Forum in, wait for it, 2009. I was so excited to see, great evaluation from Andy. I didn't really know who he was, but I told Ron Seaver about it, and he says, hey, Andy is the godfather of sports. And I'm like, who knew? Oh, welcome, Andy. We're so glad you're here with us today.
I appreciate it. It's always good to be with all of my friends on this call and the NSF. I'm happy that you and I have the same hair color today, so we match. That's a positive. And here's a point that people might not be aware of. Ron Seaver and the team at NSF have always been industry leaders. And I have a deal with Ron because I wasn't lucky like Nemeth to be 40 under 40. But Ron has promised me that if I'm still around, I could be 1 over 100. And so I'm really looking forward for that. And for the younger generation, NSF will be announcing a 10 toddler under 30 category to get out in front of SBJ and all the different categories they have.
Oh, Andy, you never disappoint, I tell you. Thank you for your sense of humor. Working in sports for over 50 years, and I bet your wife has a sense of humor because she's been married to you for 49 years. Holy cow. I bet that's entertaining in itself.
It definitely is. Just ask our children.
Well, and speaking of your children, I love that you shared with me that one of the things that you're most proud of is the fact that your 3 adult children have never served any significant time in jail, and all
That's right.
Jobs. So congratulations on that. That's pretty cool. And I also enjoyed your fun fact. He shared that he has caught and released an 800-pound blue marlin. Wow, I can't imagine. And he has also caught, sushi'd, sashimi'd, and wasabi'd a 250-pound yellowfin tuna. Wow, I'm pretty impressed there. I think there should be a competition for that as well.
Well, I love to be out on the ocean. It's everybody has their way of getting together with larger powers, and that's what I do.
I love it. Well, in our conversations and preparing for this, you mentioned the new different. Tell us what the new different is.
We have all suffered, and I mean we, the entire globe, a punch in the gut, a smack upside the head. And when that happens in real life, it takes you time to recover. So when everyone, Ruby, is talking about, hey, we're getting back to the new normal, that is just not something that I buy. what we've gained, the knowledge that we've gained, and John started out, talking about venues. I'll get back to that in a second. We've learned a great deal in so many different areas from A to Z, and that's going to be used in the next chapter of our lives, especially in the world of sports. Yesterday is not necessarily going to be today or tomorrow, and that's what I mean by the new different. There's nothing wrong with it, but we need to think change. We need to conceptualize through the windshield and not the rear view mirror. And I hear so many people in the industry letting out a deep breath and saying, oh, wow, we're back to the new normal. I look at the new different.
And I like that perspective too. So many of my friends are doing the same thing in the world of speaking. Our world has changed tremendously and we're back. But, and if I say the word pivot just once, forgive me, but everybody's had to adjust and we're looking at it as a positive thing. And I think that in sports and entertainment, we can do the same. So as you think about the world of sports, what is the most important constituency in the world of sports that you think?
And when I was listening to John, and I thank John AE and AECOM for their support of the Ohio University Sports Management Program, and I'm a proud graduate way back in 71. That was 1971, not 1871, just for the people that are listening. So the Ohio University family is far and wide in the world of sports. When John was talking about analytics and metrics and econometrics, looking at stadiums and venues, I was thinking of what sports venues really represent. And Ruby, they represent the last town squares left in America. That's where people get together. There was a group of people a long time ago that originated a concept of sound mind, sound body. And when I look at venues, all types of venues, from Little League playing fields to stadiums with 100,000 or more, it comes down to what type of psychic value we have in those stadiums, not just how much money per square foot can we generate in these suites or these concession stands or other levels of value in our stadium. It's what goes up here when people come back and get together in those stadiums. And speaking about the new different, I think sport around the world represents an opportunity for people to socialize again. And all of us, when we talk to our friends, what did they miss the most during the pandemic? The socialization, the ability to sit with somebody, see their face without a mask, and have a conversation, no matter how inane it might be. So as John was talking, I was thinking about the venuization. I don't think that's a word, Ruby. Venuization.
Down. Venuization.
You'll have to we'll check in with John, but you look at these multi-billion-dollar facilities, how many of them are even close to 50%? Very few, if none. So I think one of the challenges of the new different is how do we use these stadiums, venues, playing fields around the country to basically talk about that town square? And it doesn't just have to be sport. It can be all manner of life.
Absolutely. That town square represents the community, and that community feeling is the things that I've missed the most. Next week, we go to the National Speakers Association annual convention, and I'm so excited to hug my friends. It's like we miss that interaction being in person. So I know.
And what will you do after you hug? You'll start to tell stories, and that's what sport is all about: storytelling. The psychic value of all of these facilities, to me, is maybe more important than the financial value.
Absolutely. And when you're thinking about the more that we create that town hall, that community, the more they want to come back and the more the revenue comes in. But all the things that we're talking about today will lead to that revenue generation. And I love your psychic moment there. I feel like you should have a little crystal ball there because, wouldn't that be great that we could really think about it? But if we do pause long enough.
Here, I have one.
Oh.
I have a crystal ball. Yeah. I have
So
a crystal football too, and I have a crystal golf ball too, and I have a crystal soccer ball too, just to let you know that I was prepared for that zinger.
Well, see, and I was prepared to, if anybody went too long, I could do my little alarm there.
I know I'm getting one of those, Ruby. I know I'm getting one.
I just have it handy. I wanted to let you know that I was prepared as well. So, when you think about the number one lesson that you have learned, in your wisdom, and as you gear to that halfway mark to the 100-year mark to get your award, I would like to know what's the number one lesson that you've learned as an executive working in this business?
Be a lifelong learner. And a lot of people in today's world, we've all sat in meetings where the thought bubble above that executive's head was, have I told you that I'm the smartest person in the room in the last 5 seconds? And then the thought bubble disappears and another one comes up. Remember, I'm the smartest person in the room. That's just, I think in thought bubbles. So simple answer to your question, be a lifelong learner. If you think you know it all, you don't know anything. So there are so many opportunities today to learn anything about anybody, anywhere, at any time. Ruby, you interview thousands of people. How many of them do a deep dive into who you are before they're talking to you? It's amazing how many times they blank, and that was available to them. So in the circumstance of what I've learned over my time in sports is you don't know as much as you think you do. Go to the smartest people in all types of businesses, not just in sports, and knock on a door and try to learn something new every day or multiple times a day.
Wow, I will reiterate that one because I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing people. And my favorite thing that they do is when an executive gets in a room and just asks questions and then listens. And to get to that part, to appreciate that the people who are working with them do have the answers, it really is empowering for them. Plus, they find out that they don't know everything and that they may be making decisions that are going to impact everybody. But if they step back and listen, of course, they have to ask the right questions to create the environment. Not only does it help them with the wisdom, but it also gets all of the people like, wow, my voice counts. That's where that employee engagement comes in. So, I've said for a long time that your staff is going to treat your customers like you treat your staff. And if you want to be nice to your employees, then they'll be nice. But it doesn't work the other way around. You can't be not nice and expect them to be nice. So,
absolutely. You and I have talked about the 3 core lessons also that I've learned: teamwork, leadership, and trust. It seems very simple, right? Look at all the different entities in sports and figure out how many of those year in and year out represent teamwork, leadership, and trust. Many of them might have 2, they might have 1, but there's not very many that have 3. And that is also something that I've learned over time. If you look at success and failure, it always comes back to teamwork, leadership, and trust. And also those leaders that you were talking about. Time in today's world, in my view, is way more valuable than money. Time is way more valuable than money. How many PowerPoint presentations have you been in where the nitwit up front is reading what's in the PowerPoint? It's like, yo, I can read. Don't waste my time doing that. Tell me something that I don't know.
Absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit about the trust factor too, because I think that trust in the last year has really made a big difference, and that engagement factor really has developed that trust. And a good teamwork individual and a good leader is going to really care about and listen and appreciate that comment about that time is more valuable than money. Investing in your staff that way makes a big difference. So Gosh, thank you, Andy. I really appreciate it. We'll have you back in a few minutes.
Perfect segue to Mr. Mercurio. You look at the thousands of people that have been operationally responsible in their organizations. How much more important did they become in the last year and a half to their organizations?
Absolutely, I tell you. Well, thank you, Andy, and we'll ask Jim to join us right now and see if we can get some wisdom from the other part of California right now. So welcome, Jim. Thanks for joining.
Good morning. Thank you so much. How did I get the straw to go after Andy Dolich? That's unfair.
Well, we drew straws, and no, I'm just kidding. It was just random. We just thought this would be a good flow for the topics.
Absolutely, great stuff. Yeah.
I first met Jim at the NFL security training seminar in Chicago in 2010. And during that training, I personally witnessed the fact that when Jim talks, everyone listens. It's like the room just goes hush and looks at him. So I was honored to do training for his team before they prepared to move over to Santa Clara. And gosh, that seemed like yesterday. But how long have you been in Levis Stadium now?
This is 7. Yeah, opened up 2014, right?
That's wild. That's wild. Time does fly, that's for sure.
Indeed.
Jim has worked full-time with the San Francisco 49ers for 28 years. He's proud of the team that he's built over the years, and many of them have stayed to grow and mature into leadership roles themselves. He's also proud of those who have moved on to join other teams and open up other stadiums. And having worked with you directly, I can see that is a huge talent of yours, Jim. Here's his fun
I'm not sure it's my talent as much as it is the people that choose to join the team, but thanks for that, Ruby.
You bet. And you've got to tell us a little bit more about this. Jim's fun fact is that Jim and his wife have 19 chickens, 6 goats, 2 pigs, 2 donkeys, 2 dogs, and a partridge in a pear tree. What a menagerie. Tell me, how did you get all that together?
We moved to the country about 5 or 6 years ago, and somebody bought me a cowboy hat at one point in time and said, hey, you can't be all hat and no cattle. So I had to decide, all right, let's try that. And I tried the cow thing and the harvesting thing, and it was a little bit much for my wife. But she took on the just absolute enjoyment of animals and taking care of people. I think she's starting to like animals more so than she is people. And then I would tell you, we'd add one more to the donkey list if you included me in that list. So,
well, and we'll call it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, she really enjoys it, so it gives her a purpose, which is great.
A friend of mine has a 2 donkeys, and they just had a little baby donkey. So they put a picnic table out in the pasture so that they can have dinner and have the donkeys around them. So just add that to your menagerie for some fun there.
I'm sure it's coming at some point in time for certain.
You bet. Well, we ask you to speak about operations because you're the king of operations. So let's talk about what are you seeing and some of the top issues returning to work and play and spectate this season coming out of COVID?
Well, listen, I think Andy kind of started to touch on it with respect to people, right? And employees and the importance of recognizing their worth and their value. And I think with the service industry that has just been decimated, that's going to be our biggest challenges. And we're certainly seeing it now. I mean, when you see Burger King and Taco Bell and all these other places hanging banners outside their restaurants saying, we'll pay you $1,500 signing bonus to come to work for us, there's a problem. And so it's not lost on me. It's certainly not lost on our organization either that, we got to pay attention there. So we're really seeing, some challenges there especially with respect to benefits and unemployment and things of that nature. I think people in some cases are incentivized right now to not work in some cases. And then there's some real other challenges. I mean, when you start to look at people recognizing the importance of family and values and reevaluating whether or not that second job that they had in this industry, maybe I don't want to do that anymore. Maybe I'm in a point in time in my life where I want to value my weekends a little bit more than I maybe have in the past. And then you look at those that have childcare, real problems with childcare and trying to address that. And so to give up money, time, effort, and money to put people and their families in childcare just because they can go work a football game, is in some cases financially doesn't pencil. So you really got to pay attention to that with respect to how you're hiring, how you're incentivizing. And it's not always about money, in my view. It's really about how you treat people and how you want them to treat your customers, just like you said. So we're really focusing on our employees as customers, and we really have for years, I think, as you might know.
I remember that.
Our employees are our customers, and so we think there's a direct correlation between how you treat them and how they treat our fans.
One of the things in the incentivizing the new employees to come into, a recent study, and actually a continued study, but they revalidated it recently, that when people are looking for a new job, training is one of the perks that they're looking for. They want that development. And certainly over the pandemic, we watched so many people just dig in and learn new things. I have a friend who learned Chinese. I'm like, what? Over just amazing. But we've got that yearn to do something with our brain and to make ourselves better. So that the training can really be an incentive as they're coming on board. Where are you finding a lot of your staff for getting ready for the season?
Well, listen, we went to, you do the old fashioned stuff. We actually just had a job fair, and we'll have another one here every couple of weeks just to kind of get people reminded that we're back and open for business. You got to remember, we were closed, in Santa Clara. We weren't able to.
And had to move.
And we had to move, right? We had to move to Arizona for the last 3 or 4 games of the season, and so we only had a handful of people working our games. You still had football games that we put on, but you had no fans. It still meant you had a number of employees that had to do key roles and boards, and security still needed to be there. Some guest services personnel that still needed food and beverage in some cases, right? But you didn't have the full contingency of that, 25 to 3,500 employees a game. And so you have to kind of remind them that they're out there. So in fact, right after I get off of this, we have a meeting with our HR department and my guest services team to kind of go over some of those strategies to reach out to different organizations, go down certain pathways that you may not have gone, whether it's schools and campuses or churches and things of that nature. We're looking at any and all industries that typically haven't maybe been a part of the event industry, and seeing if they're interested in coming back to work. When you're looking at sports, you usually have a pretty good inherent reason to come back, but there's still some anxiety out there that we think with respect to COVID and getting back into the full swing of having 70,000 people in and around you. So it's not just the fans that are apprehensive. I think some of the employees could be too.
I bet you've experienced this too. I've worked with a couple of universities to get them up to speed to welcome fans back. And one of the things that they encountered was that some of their older staff, which they rely on because they're retired and they have a pretty easy schedule that they can be flexible with, they have said, you know what, I think I'm going to pass the season. And they're like, okay, so there's a lot of openings that we didn't plan on. So not only are you short staff.
You're exactly right, Ruby. That niche that you talk about is about 25 to 30% of the workforce, right? And so that's that group of individuals that are saying, I'm not sure that I want to go this time, and it may be temporary, and it may not be. Right. It's a lot of. How many times have you seen and heard even our football players talk about how great it's been to spend a little bit more time with their family, training on their own, that they've never really been able to spend time with their family, and people realize that. You know what? Actually, I like our family. I like my family. I like being around them a little bit more. Now, let's see how long that lasts. Some people are going to want to get out of the holidays, right? And so, hey, get me out of here. But I do think there is that group of individuals that say, hey, and I'm not interested in putting my spouse or my grandparents in any risk right now. So I'm going to be risk averse. And so I think that's also some of the things we got to be mindful about.
We truly are in the new different, and I know that you're well known for pushing the envelope and doing some new innovative things. So, what are you undertaking at Levis Stadium for the new and different, innovative?
Yeah, listen, we've always pushed the envelope with respect to technology, and kind of we're coined the, one of the most technologically advanced, stadiums in the country, if not the world. And we started to learn that we just didn't want to do technology for technology's sake. You have to look at what people, process, and technology can do to help, not cause not to cause additional issues. But one of the things I think you will see, we tried to unveil this in 2019, but because of the pandemic, we didn't get to do that in 20, which is an all-inclusive food and beverage program. And so you heard John and Andy talk a little bit about food and beverage and how stadiums were designed with, traditional belly-up concession stands. So the real estate is a little bit of a challenge, but what we've tried to do is look at different ways in which people can consume food. And if you talk to other industry experts, they'll tell you that 20% of your queues for food and beverage, or your SKUs, kind of constitute about 80% of your value and revenue. And so what we really started to look at is how we can capitalize on that. And one of the things that I've always wanted to do, even in the candlestick days, was try to figure out a way to get all-inclusive to people and forget about that transactional time and the time it takes to be in a line. I've always been one of those guys that hates standing in line, and as best we can to try to improve that, we're going to want to do that. So what you'll see in the food and beverage side for us is all-inclusive. It's all part of your ticket. You get to go up to the concession stands as many times as you want to get as much food as drink that you want. Alcohol is not included. You got to pay for that additionally, but it'll be hopefully something that fans will really appreciate, where they can just kind of, we're going to go mobile. So you are going to have to go into the QR code, and we all have experienced that this past 16 months of not touching a menu, but going up to a QR code, right? So you should know how to do all that instinctively now. But you get up to your line, you see what's on the menu on your phone, you type in the 4 items that you want, which is a four item max right now, so I can keep up with capacity. Your number will come up on the screen, and you'll walk up and you go pick your bag with no transaction. So hopefully that all-inclusive experience is something that people will enjoy. Other stuff, we're looking at additional frictionless opportunities, right? And so there's another frictionless thing where you don't have a bunch of touch and go points, but when you come into the stadium, you'll look at, we went mobile in 2014 above everybody else, or prior to a lot of people. But we are now full mobile, so no more hard tickets. And then we'll also look at our ticket scanners, and turnstiles will be self-sufficient. So, it's been on the market for a while, but now you have a lot less touch points. We're looking at AI to kind of help us, and hopefully help us with respect to number of employees you may or may not need. And then lastly, cashless is it's one of the things we saw. It was going there anyway, and we were trying to go there anyway. The pandemic just kind of sped that process up. We'll have reverse ATMs in the building.
What is a reverse ATM?
So a reverse ATM is for those that just, for whatever reason, still want to function in cash. We're not taking cash, so you'll put cash in, you get a gift card out, you go up and you'll be able to purchase using that gift card. I think there's still going to be a need for that. Certainly the state of California, there's a requirement. They're not quite ready to give up on that legacy piece. And so we'll be there for that subset of the population, which we think somewhere is around 1 or 2%. So once we get through that piece, those are some of the technology improvements that we're making in and around the stadium. And I think you'll see it in and around the industry as we move forward.
I'm curious about your food and beverage app with the ordering. Is that did you create that and put it into your major app for the stadium, or was it something separate, or did you create it, or did your food and beverage provider create it?
Yeah, it's within our app, and all the brains behind that. There's a whole bunch of different components associated with that. Our friends at Visa are certainly helping there as well, but it is part of the 49ers Levis Stadium app. So as you come to the facility, we'll over communicate to our fans. We'll have to do it when they're getting in their car as well, and when they're getting to the facility, but we'll have signage hopefully everywhere that kind of explains how that works. I'm like anything else, when you're unveiling it, I'm anticipating a few hiccups, but it's how you respond and recover to those types of things until people really understand what you're trying to do. But yeah, it's all embedded in the 49ers app, and to kind of hopefully make it pretty intuitive for our fans and guests.
I bet when you're talking about season ticket holders renewing or anybody just buying a ticket and you let them know that it's all inclusive, they're like, huh? I'm sure those folks will go a little bit longer.
It's funny. We just had we do a bunch of outreach to folks, and we did some focus groups. Thank you. And one of the questions came back was, it was funny. A guy says, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And I think at some point in time, you have to realize that people can only eat so many hot dogs and nachos and things of that nature, right? But look, if that's what you want to do, we're going to make it a great experience, and we'll do everything we can to make it a great experience for you. But we think that's the right play, and we're hopeful that our fans appreciate it.
2020 was just that year where we worked with. We thought we were going in a direction, and then we changed them. We thought we were going in a direction, we had to change, and then the guidelines changed. The state, the city, the county, whatever requirements, the federal government, CDC, they made so many changes along the way. So we really had to be flexible. So what do you see in 21-22 for your season?
Well, I heard you say the word pivot earlier today, which made me kind of smirk and almost
dance around it.
And almost cringe, because that's all you heard was you got to pivot and you got to be flexible and you got to be all these things. And it was certainly the buzzword these past 18 months. But it was true, right? Because the change was, I mean, in some cases daily. And when you have a plan in place, and sometimes when you move one lever, people don't know, the ramifications of all the other impacts of that change. And so in 2020 for us, as we remember, we did shut down and we pivoted, pardon the term, and opened up a voting center at Levis Stadium, which is really kind of a proud moment to be able to open the building in a different way from which it was, really designed. It was not designed for that sort of an event. It was designed for multifaceted events and entertainment, but not certainly for a voting center. But it was a great opportunity, and I think you'll see that being carried on, not just in my venue, but venues across the country as we move into the next phases of that. And then we pivoted again as we opened up, the largest vaccination center in the state of California, with over 350,000 vaccinations in the arms of people coming in and out of Levi Stadium. So I got to hand it to my crew. My team was just amazing, being able to, and that was inside, right? This was, the county didn't want to do it outside in the parking lot, which was a lot of stadiums and places with big parking lots were doing. So we had to do it in it. We did it in our clubs and our locker rooms and things of that nature. So it caused a tremendous amount of operational logistical challenges, but they were overcome by great professionals on my team, and my hat's off to them. And it also gave those customers coming in a pretty cool experience of being able to come into a stadium where they may have never come before. So maybe there's a little bit of a marketing opportunity for people to visit this, right?
It was great seeing so many of the teams open up their buildings for that. Really was community oriented, and it really made a difference. So yes,
there's no question. It was like I told my team, this is probably going to be the most important event you've ever worked in your life, and it certainly was for me. I mean, in many cases, when you talk about, I just want to go. You talk about wanting to go see your folks at your conference and hug somebody. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the first ladies that came out of being vaccinated that day, as I was talking to a colleague of mine and on the bridge, and she walked out and she had her mask on and she was crying, and I said, "Jesus, everything okay?" And she says, "I just want to hug you now," and I'm like, yeah. Or somebody, and. Yeah. This is so important for us in the community, so we were real proud to do that. But I mean, to your question, I think 2021 is we're going to need to continue to be resourceful. I think we're going to have to learn to do more with less, whether it's with employees or with resources, because you got to remember, there was an economic, a massive economic hit. These past 18 months to everybody. And so you're still going to have to be paying for that somehow, some way down the road. And so I think that'll be probably what happens for us in 2021, is really focusing on how you can utilize your people, again, your processes, your technology in such a way that can allow you to do more with less, candidly, as we move forward. 2022, I see a bustling schedule, probably similar to that of where it was in 2014 for us when we first opened up the stadium. with special events and concerts and other, non-NFL events, so to speak. But I think 2021, we got to hold on because it's going to be a ride.
It's going to be a ride, that's for sure. And we're so happy to be back in action. So, gosh, Jim, thank you. I so appreciate your insight. We'll invite you back to do a little quick recap here. And then I'm going to invite Andrew on the screen here to join us. Andrew Nahr is a new friend and a great friend. I got to know him through a mutual friend, and my first encounter with him was so heartwarming, and we have so much in common in helping the fan experience and the journey of the fans and acknowledging the fans. So welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Ruby. I appreciate it. I'm just sitting here basking in the glow of all this great knowledge and wisdom that's been part of these last few minutes. So I hope I don't become the bathroom break for everybody, but I'm looking forward to this.
Well, they better not leave, because we're going to hear some new things about a platform that you've developed that I'm so excited about. Andrew is a Game Plan U National Sports Tech Pitch Champion. And the product he's going to tell you a little bit about today is how he won that pitch was on that product. He's also part of the team that helped open the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, Missouri. Wow, quite a diverse background that you have here in all that you do with the technology and helping with that opening. That's pretty cool.
I've been blessed for sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And here's his fun fact. He proposed to his girlfriend at home plate in Fenway Park before a Red Sox-Rays game. Then the groundskeeper asked if he wanted to paint the home plate while he and his girlfriend were still both crying. That must have been quite the event there, sir.
It was. In fact, I'm still crying right now. So it was absolutely a wonderful memory, and the Red Sox were very, very good to us. We get asked about the story all the time. So it's nice to have a legacy.
I love it. And, I'm married to the man of my dreams, and we have many of those romantic moments, and he has that mindset too. So good on you for being the romantic.
That's right.
You bet.
A great way of using sports to do it too. So even better.
You bet. We want to talk a little bit about fan engagement. So let's first start off with, what has the pandemic really affected? How has it affected the fans' mindset?
Well, I think all our panelists have pretty much touched on it, that we as human beings have all felt a sense of loss because there was so much normalcy that was kind of taken away from us, and what we were used to doing kind of stopped, and we had to figure out and had to adjust. And I hate to use the word pivot for Andy's sake, but we all had to.
I'm just keeping track. I only said it once, so.
But we all had to kind of make mental adjustments. It was every aspect of our lives were adjusted, but I think it also kind of touched on a nerve, especially with sports fans, that they understand how important sports are, but they look at sports, the teams and athletes as family members in a way, and there was some disconnect there that they really didn't get to interact in the ways that they were normal. So they're really kind of looking for ways, I think, now to have stronger connections. They want to get closer. They want to be more behind the scenes. They want to feel like they are a part of the organization, part of the team.
And they want to tell those stories like everybody has talked about. It's really important to
your
buddies and relive some of those memories, just like you relive your proposal memory there.
Right. Well, and there's, study after study that's showing there is a huge resurgence of nostalgia. Mm-hmm. And you could see that in people's buying habits with their food and with playlists on Spotify and iTunes, and even what they were watching on television and Netflix. There was this strong sense of nostalgia, that those memories are important, and they realize how important they are to our daily lives. And that's something that is going to stay around. That's an issue that is not going to wane. It's not a trend. It is something that is back, and back probably stronger than ever.
You bet. So how did the teams capitalize on that? What are some of the opportunities that we can use in sports and entertainment to really dig into that opportunity?
Well, I've always enjoyed the meetings that we've had with teams when their people lead with, we're in the memory making business. And that's really true. And I think this is probably the greatest time for teams to really embrace the power of memories and those emotional bonds that they have with fans, because the bottom line is that you guys created these memories. Whether it's they've been at a stadium or they're watching, it's that fandom is that really key bond that you have. And you can be a fan from anywhere in the world. You may have never stepped foot in a stadium, but you could be the most rabid fan as well. So to understand that they've already done the work, we just feel like that these memories are really underutilized, but very valuable asset that teams could be mining. Because when you speak of memories, everybody thinks of kind of a relic or something way of the past, but memories are in us in the moment. It's what drives us. It's what motivates us. The old saying is, we all make decisions based on emotions, but we just convince ourselves that we make a logical decision. So memories are very much the makeup of humans. But I think sports teams really need to look at it at, this is an incredibly valuable resource of content, of data, and obviously of new revenue opportunities as well. So I think when they see their analytics on their social posts, they see probably the highest engagement is on highlights. Well, that's because people want to relive memories. They want, when those exciting things that have happened, they want to see that over and over and over again. And we all, we have those in our own mind, whether it's not only on our phone, but, it's in our mental bank too, that we draw upon. And that, that's what causes the engagement with other fans to talk or wanting to do more with teams, is that they're really relying on the culmination of all those emotional moments are something that continue to drive interactions and engagement with their favorite teams.
Well, I bet our audience is very curious about Rakoti. I see on the screen, there's more to your story.
Right.
So, and what do you do with those memories, and how do you capitalize on them, and how would our audience members capitalize on them?
Well, we were very diligent in talking to not only fans, but also people inside the teams that would be using this. And we wanted to be very conscious of creating a product that would be easy for them to use and obviously very effective in helping them leverage not only the moments that are happening on a game day, but throughout the year, but also a way of being able to take all this great historical content that they're sitting on and bringing it back to life and giving it the opportunity to be engaging with fans on a daily basis, but also the potential generating revenue for them on a daily basis instead of just sitting on a server or in a Dropbox or cloud folder, really not doing much for them right now. So what we have come up with is a collaborative content management platform. It's on a SaaS model, so the team has it. They control everything about it. They can brand every aspect of it. They also control all the data to it. But what we do is our system leverages texting, so they will send out. They can create specific codes, unique codes for each book. So it can be for attendees. It could be for people watching at home. It could be people that at a sports bar that they may have a sponsorship with, but it can be for anybody around the world. They can slice it and dice it. It could be people sitting in a luxury suite, or that little league team that came, to see a game for something. So you can create books for unique audiences. You can invite them, then they upload pictures and videos, and then they tell their story with it. And then, they click that they accept that when they send it back, that the team can use this any way that they want. But it also, then it brings it into a very simple content management platform where we have pre-formatted layouts. So the team isn't having to sit there and figure out cropping and doing all these other things. It's basically just putting the content and the stories together. They can put chapters to it. They can really make it any way they want, but it's really leveraging all the multimedia assets, and then they integrate the content that they have created, which could be their own pictures and videos, as well as all the social posts that they have created, because these teams are incredibly creative with their animated GIFs and their memes and things like that. And they deserve to have a longer shelf life than they normally do on social media, which, by all accounts, it's 15 to 20 minutes shelf life. But now you're putting it into a digital book that has a longer shelf life as well. But
so if you upload some pictures, then and I'm sitting with you and I want to share my pictures, or I want to see the pictures that you uploaded, as a fan, do I have access to that too?
Well, what the end product is that the team creates the book. They merge. They decide what fan content that they want by in their interface. They can see the collaborative content from the fans, as well as being able to access the content that the team has on their own servers or Dropbox or wherever it is. So they create the book, and then they can push it back. They push it back out via a magic link on text. So that way they can target who gets that. So it could go back to the attendees from the game that night. It could be people that were in a luxury suite. It could be just, fans at home. Or like I said, even the people that are together at a sports bar that you have a sponsor with. So they can use it. They can use it to connect with the audience in any way that they want and how they see fit. And so they also have the ability to throttle it up and down, so they can gamify it and say the first 100 people to do this, or the first 200 people to do it, or something like that. So the fans feel like that they're being selective and being a part of something very, very special. And of course, when a book comes back, you can read that digital book over and over and over again, which is what you want. And then that's also extremely shareable. I mean, people can share it to their social. They can, text. That's right. And then the book is also digital real estate. And we also, so that becomes revenue opportunities through sponsorships. We have e-commerce capabilities built in, so it ties into, their ticketing or to their merchandise stores or things like that. So when they have kind of people at an emotional, pitch, they can have a call to action, within that book as well. And then, they can create premium subscriptions if they want VIP kind of experiences with it. But the books can also be turned into NFTs as well and made digital collectibles if they want to do that.
I had to look it up when you first told me that. I will confess. I think I get it now. And actually, yesterday on Twitter, there was a guy who posted, I just bought the first NFT on Twitter. I'm like, that's so special, but I'm really not sure I understand it. So
yeah.
Tell the audience exactly what an NFT is.
But when I start talking about with my wife, she does, I hear this, but I want to hear this. So I totally understand about that. But one of the more important aspects of Recody is that content and those pictures and videos, as well as the text, because they're encouraged to write a story and they're limited right now to 6 files. So it could be a combination of pictures and video, but 6 things, and then they write a story, into it. Because what we do is we're able through AI to pull that content as well as scan the pictures and videos, and then give the team really a very personalized data file on that person that now they can integrate into their CRM programs or in their analytics. So what we're doing is by leveraging these emotional moments and people's love and desire to be a part of the team, to be involved with something, is that they're now going to be sharing very deep personal insights on themselves that you probably couldn't get really any other way. Definitely from not scraping anything off of any other kind of social post or things like that. And they're willingly giving this to you.
Yeah.
That's right. It's like, here, I'll do more, and I want to do it again. And plus, now I want to be a part of it. So I think that's one of the critical factors is we're not being another social media platform. We are all about content creation. We're all about sales. We're all about revenue. That we feel like this is an incredibly powerful opportunity for teams to really mine these assets. We like to say we want to help you turn your memories into digital assets, and that's our objective, is to be very strategic with the team, make it very easy to use. But this is something that's already out there, and that we feel like that they can really maximize and really turn into, I think, more powerful, constructive ways of keeping their whole community engaged, not just people who attend games or people that live in the city, but embracing that community from around the globe as well.
Wow. Well, there's been, I think about the win-win-win always. How can you create an opportunity that's going to be a win-win-win? It's a win for the fans, it's a win for the team, and it could be a win for sponsorships too. I mean, it could be full circle. And I love that you mentioned strategy, Andrew, because we started out talking about strategy and really looking at the future and really processing it in a positive way. So, and I'm going to be sharing some resources with you, with all the audience members, so you'll be able to get in touch with each one of these experts here and ask some questions. And I'm sure you're going to be wanting some information on Riccotti, because it's fascinating to me, Andrew. Thank you for creating that. It's
it's been fun as both an entrepreneur and also as a sports fan, because I look at it through the lens of a business person, but as well as somebody who wants to do this myself. So it's a very exciting time for sure.
Wow. Well, pretty impressive here. I enjoyed hearing about it the first time, and I also really liked hearing about it again today. So thank you so much. We'll
Thank you, Ruby.
Back in a few minutes and give kind of a recap. But before we close up, and before our experts get to give us their last parting words, I wanted to share with you a little opportunity here. So what you need to do is pick up your phone and turn on your camera, and then take a picture of, actually you just hit the button and over the QR code, and that will send you to a resource page that we're creating. And here's some of the pieces that we'll put in there for you so that you have all the information. You'll get all the contact information for all of the panelists, books, articles, podcasts, any kind of sports related resources that were relevant for this program. Also, I'm going to give you some free recording of my virtual workshops, free access to them. I know how hard it is to get staff back into the building and understand all the new guidelines. So I've got some training that I've created for you, and those links are free. I want to make sure that you utilize them, and I'm all about helping us get back fans and stands. So, and I'm offering a free consultation if you'd like 30 minutes, you'll be able to sign up for it. Our contact information is going to be really helpful, because I'm sure you have questions, and we want to make sure that we're there for you in this process. So what I'd like to do next is invite all of our experts back to the stage, as they say, and we're going to have them share their, just a few takeaways from this session. We want to make sure that everybody is dealing with life in the new different, and so we'll have a little recap here for you, and then we'll wrap it up today. John, do you want to start?
Sure. I think, again, the panelists have all been great. I think we've heard a great diversity of perspectives around this topic of new different. I think that the common theme, though, is constantly being okay or being comfortable, challenging your norms and looking for different ways to do things. We can't come out of what we've all been through returning to business as usual. And so how are we gonna do the new business as normal and do it better, more efficient, and in a way that helps us maybe more resist an event like this in the future if one were to happen.
Thank you so much. John or Andy, would you like to share your words of wisdom?
Well, I'm just preparing for the UFO invasion and our next get together when we talk about how sports will be impacted. I know Mercurio is asking them to land on the 50-yard line at Levi's. On a serious note, I would say, first of all, thank you to NSF for giving us this opportunity. Secondly, to all of those people that are joining us in any kind of digital format, think about what you can do to become a better leader and to help your organization become a bigger and better and more involved entity in your community, because that's what I think we've really talked about here. How important sports, the venues, and the whole process is to communities. And what we've all learned, I've definitely learned that protocols, we have all been through multiple protocols. And I see Jim smiling here. And what do protocols have? They have tactics and strategies. So many of us believe that tactics were strategy. Learn the difference between tactics and strategy. Tactics go into creating a strategy, and that's what we all need to do, especially in times of uncertainty. And the only certain part about the future is there's going to be more uncertainty. So get your tactics together, put them in an actionable strategy so you can deal with all manner of circumstances that are definitely coming.
Great wisdom there. That strategy piece has to be the theme throughout this whole session with everybody. It definitely brings it home. Thank you, Andy. Jim, speak to us.
Yeah, Ruby, I think for me, and what I'm asking of not only myself, but my team is to remind everybody to pay attention to the details, right? Those are strategies. Those are certainly techniques, but you really got to pay attention to the details. Recognize when your fans come back into our venues that, and certainly our employees, that they're going to need to be reminded of what your rules are, what your expectations are, what the etiquette is, what your fan code of conduct policies are, and be mindful and patient in recognizing that there's likely going to be a level of anxiety that you've not experienced in the past and they might not have experienced in the past. So just be mindful there. Lastly, I leave with what I tried to remind myself, and kind of Andy talked about it. We need to learn, we need to teach, we need to train, we need to coach, we need to remind, and then hit repeat. And you got to do that over and over and over again, because you can't just assume that people are going to remember what all your policies were in 2019 when we were doing this. You can't remember all of the training that you did back then. And you can't just say, hey, let's just do what we did in 2019 and add and sprinkle on a few new policies and procedures. You really got to start over. And when you start over, it gives you that opportunity to remind people what it is you expect of them and what you need for them to convey. And then lastly, I would say just be nice. You know, there's a couple old movies that just talked about just be nice and how you deal with customers and how you doing with fans and how you doing with each other. We sometimes just got to remind, in all of this craziness, if we can just be nice, it might solve at least 50% of the issues that we're dealing with. So I'll leave it at that.
I love it. And be nice. What a concept. Thank
Right.
you. You bet. Andrew, would you bring us home?
Thank you. Well, I'm just going to reiterate what the panel's already said, because I think even that we live in such a digital first world, and there's so much that goes on in the sports business around digital, we still need to remember that we're dealing with human beings, and the human beings are sensitive and they're emotional and they're wired in different ways, but they are wired to be part of a community. They want to feel a part of things. And so everything that you do, and I think even what Jim said, because it's not just fans that had a loss, these teams have had a loss, and there's probably people that are back at their jobs with friends that aren't there with them anymore, that they've been working with. And so they're probably dealing with some grief and loss as well. So whether you're dealing with your fans or you're dealing with your staff, you're dealing with emotional beings, and definitely be kind and be thoughtful about how you interact on a very human, authentic level.
What a great wrap up there. I'm going to invite you to all be on the screen at the same time. I think everybody's had enough time to take a picture of the QR code. So if you would, Melissa, if you do your magic, there we go. I believe that this is a pretty smart group, and I was so honored to have the opportunity to work with them. Our goal was to really give you some strategies for dealing with life in the new different. So I'll say thank you to the National Sports Forum for this innovative conference and the expo and the opportunity to bond with your buddies. Also, thank each one of the panelists who did an exceptional job of putting up with me and all the details that I wanted to have a successful panel today, and they did an exceptional job. So thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you very soon, maybe even in person in February at the National Sports Forum.
Thanks, Ruby.